على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على
وسلم على آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين. قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه العزيز. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولله المشرق والمغرب فأينما تولوا فثم وجه الله. صلاة على محمد وعلى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Continuing on the discussion of the ideas of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, today I want to talk to you about some of the arguments that people put forth both for or against the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And previously I alluded to some of the arguments that people put against the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, namely the argument of evil. And evil itself, I believe I said, was that evil is the absence of existence. Evil is the absence of existence. And existence itself is the perfection of being. When I say evil is the absence of existence, imagine this water bottle was not here. If it was not here, I would not be able to gain sustenance and drink from the water bottle. That is a fault or a mistake. And indeed, evil in that sense, this is a small example, but it's not really evil for me to say that this water bottle doesn't exist, but I'm just trying to give an example here. So evil in the natural world does not exist, as I said before. Human beings and the jinn have been given free will. We create our future. Allah does not create human evil. Every child that is born into this world is born with the religion of fitrah. Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? Allah asks all of our spirits before in the previous world, am I not your Lord? And we all said yes. So everybody is born with that same fitrah. But when that person experiences society, his parents, his friends, his brothers and sisters, that's what makes the person themselves, and that is what corrupts the person. I remember maybe 20 years ago, somebody put up a Discovery Channel show about the idea of nature versus nurture. Meaning, to what extent are we predisposed by our natural instinct to follow or to do something, versus to what extent society influences us to make our decisions. And they said, if I took Adolf Hitler, and I put him in a different family when he was a baby, maybe he was born to a different family, not exposed to the politics of the Third Reich in Germany, he might have been a peaceful citizen if he was not exposed to what he was exposed to in this world. It's the world that corrupts us. And indeed, we have to make sure that we are not corrupted by this world. When we talk about the arguments for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will say first there are theological arguments for the existence of God, and there are philosophical arguments for the existence of God. Theological arguments presuppose the conclusion to be true. That's why, if you look at, for example, Mullah Sadra, when he studied with Mir Baqir Damad, Sheikh Bahai, and some say Mir Fendelinsky, he studied both the ulum al-naqli and ulum al-aqli, meaning he studied both the transmitted sciences and he studied the natural or the social sciences as well. And in some say he even studied Buddhism with one of his teachers. But when he studied the theological sciences, ulum naqli, he found them to be inherently flawed. The arguments of the ulum naqli to be flawed because it presupposes the existence or presupposes that the conclusion be true. If I were to go to an atheist and I bring him the Quran and I show ayahs of the Quran that prove the existence of God, do you think he's going to believe me? Or is he going to say, of course the Quran presupposes the existence of God. The Nabuwat and the message of Muhammad itself is dependent on the existence of God. Therefore, na'udhu billah, to blind the people, the prophets of God had these books written so that they could get power. Indeed, that's not an argument that's not known to us. When Muawiyah became Khalifa, Imam Ali became Shaheed, Imam Hassan became Khalifa for a few months, and Muawiyah fought Imam al-Hassan, and the resulting in the treaty of Imam al-Hassan, Sul al-Hassan, and he went up to the minbar when he became Khalifa. He says, I don't care about your prayers, your fasting, or anything like that. All of this was just a ruse to gain power. All I want is power. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. His son, following that same idea, when Ahlul Bayt entered the courtyard of Yazid, which was Masjid ibn Umayyah in Damascus, he says there was no wahi, there was no revelation, there was no prophethood. All this was a lie so that the Banu Hashim could gain power. That's what the atheists would say. They would say that. Indeed, they go even further. They say that the argument for the existence of God is like believing in the existence of Bigfoot or a spaghetti monster who creates the world. This is arguments that they teach. But the idea for us is that the existence of God is not just an argument about the existence of God, it's an argument about the purpose of the universe itself. If I take God out of the equation, this universe becomes worthless. It is valueless in general, but without God it has zero, negative 1,000,000% value. If I take God out of the equation, there is no reason for somebody to do good. And I'm not saying that we do good for the hasanat of paradise. We do good in this world for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes. But if there's no God, I don't need to do anything. Indeed, in Islam, it's quite the opposite of what Nietzsche used to say. And he said that religion is the opium of the masses. It blinds people to live a life that the tyrants want them to live so that they could be blindfolded and follow the tyrants in every single way and every single step. Islam says if you believe in God, you change your current situation. If you believe in God, change your current situation. Do not wait for the afterlife. In a previous lecture, I said the Christians say, in heaven as it is, on earth in heaven. Meaning, I am to create paradise, what is over there in this world. Indeed, as followers of the school of Ahlul Bayt, we know that paradise is submission to the will of Ahlul Bayt themselves. Peace be upon Allah. Second time for the Lord Fatima to Zahra. So when we talk about the idea of the existence of God, and I'm talking to an atheist or a non-Muslim who does not believe in the Quran, the prophecy of Prophet Muhammad, or a Shia who does not, or a non-Shia who does not believe in the Imamat of Ahlul Bayt, I have to go through a whole different set of arguments. If I'm going to talk to an atheist, I'm not going to bring him Quran and say, look, Quran says, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Quran says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ. Quran says, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Of course he's not going to believe that. In the same way, if I go to the Christian, I will bring arguments from their books about the existence of God. If I go somebody who's Muslim, but not from the school of Ahlul Bayt, and I want to prove to them, forget not just Imam or Nubuwwah or the Ismat of Ahlul Bayt, but if I want to prove to them the characteristics of God as explained by Aimma Ahlul Bayt, I will go to them to their sources. I will prove to them from their sources. So we need to understand that the philosophical arguments for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the most powerful arguments. What arguments are there? Historically, there have been many of them. To quote a few, Aristotle's uncaused cause. Meaning God creates this universe and he sets it in motion and he lets it go to govern itself. In Muslim philosophy, we've had people who've been influenced by the Aristotelians to argue the same thing. Al-Kindi argued the same thing. But then we have the idea, if God's purpose is just to create the universe, and his existence is not necessary for the existence of the universe right now, then what's the point of him being here? What's the point of God being here? They say Muslim philosophers develop different answers. And one of the names sounds kind of strange. It might imply something else in the modern world. They were called atomists. Atomists. Not the smallest particle of matter, but these atomists believed in a small particle of time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every nanosecond he destroyed creation and every nanosecond he recreated it. Therefore, existence and creation would be completely dependent on the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what they argue. We say Allah is not only the original cause. We say Allah is necessary for the existence of the universe, and he is still governing the universe according to his will. The planets move around in the way Allah wants. The stars move the way Allah wants. The galaxies move the way Allah wants. All of creation follows a divine command. Except for the ins and the jinn who were given free will, so they got the idea that they had the chance to choose. We say that God is necessarily existent and he bestows existence on everything else. God is the necessary existence. So one uncaused cause. Aristotle and Kindi. But there are moral arguments for the existence of God. When I say moral arguments for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I don't just mean that Allah is the creator of the universe, but there are akhlaqi precepts and arguments that are put in place that prove that we need God and the moral for our morality, without which our morality would be worthless. When we talk about something that is good, I say, this mic is good. I can always think of something that is greater, better, a better mic, more sound. If I'm proving that I'm a Maulana right now, if I have a plate of halwa, I can always make it sweeter. Maulanas can do that, don't worry. Baklawa, kanafe, and everything. Please use salawat. But in the chain of things that are better, there is the best. And that best is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I went from Kanafi to Allah. If I think noble is good, there is always something that is nobler and noblest. And the noblest is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Atheists would say that our akhlaq are only relative. We say no. In order for akhlaq to be worthwhile, we need to believe in the existence of a creator who determines or who judges our akhlaq. Indeed, I quoted Aristotle and Kindi in Enlightenment Europe, the famous philosopher Kant had the idea of the categorical imperative, meaning everybody has the responsibility to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. But he defined the greatest good. Greatest good is completely relative unless you believe in a divine power who determines what the greatest good is. And there are problems with this. I'm not saying this is perfect. There are problems with this view too. If, for example, the greatest good for humanity means killing 1 million individual people to save the lives, innocent people, to save the lives of the remaining 7.8 billion people in the world today, they would say do it. But we say, from a very practical level, that the arguments for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are so deeply rooted in our being that we cannot go against the idea of the existence of God. Even the atheist believes in God. And I'll prove that to you. When we say the atheist, there's no atheist in a foxhole, they say. At every difficult time, even the atheist has hope. There was such an atheist, he came to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. And he says, prove to me the existence of God. He says, okay. He says, Imam says, are you a sailor? He says, yes. He says, Imam says, have you been in the middle of the ocean in a storm? He says, yes. He says, have you been in the middle of the ocean in a storm and your ship capsizes? He says, yes. Everything destroyed, lightning struck, only planks left? Yes. He said, you hold on to a plank? He said, yes. Did you have hope? He said, yes. Even at that time, he says, yes. He says, that is the proof of the existence of God. When I have nothing, the idea that keeps me moving forward is the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another example from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, and this is also mentioned in Western philosophy as well. If I'm not mistaken, it's called Occam's razor, if I'm not mistaken. They say somebody came to say Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, Imam was performing Hajj, and somebody, atheist, non-Shia, came up to him. He said, atheist came up to him, prove to me the existence of God. He says, this is not the time I'm doing Hajj, but if you want, I'll give you a simple answer. If there is no God, then you win, and I win. You had a good life, and I had a good life. You had wives, children, house, work, good clothing, everything. I had wives, children, house, work, good clothing, everything. But if there is a God, and I'm right, then I win, and you lose. And the guy becomes Muslim right then and there. Simple argument, but look at the power of this statement. Simple argument, but look at the power of this statement. Indeed, you can go further. There are other arguments for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Arguments that say the perfect island argument. If I imagine a perfect island in the middle of the ocean, that means that that island must exist somewhere. If I can imagine a perfect being, that means that perfect being must exist, otherwise I would not have the capability of imagining it. Please answer one. I have about 20 minutes and I want to conclude with the musibah as well. Dear brothers and sisters, Iman does not start. Of course, we need to have strong arguments by ourselves about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the Nabuwah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, about the Imamat of the Ahlul Bayt, about the Azamat of Fatima Al-Zahra sallallahu alayha. There is a tradition by the Imams that says, نحن يعني أئمة حجة الله عليكم. Meaning the Imams are the proof of God on all of humanity, on all of us. Some say, another version of that same tradition has one word that is changed. نحن يعني أئمة حجة الله على الخلق. Meaning the Imams are the proof of God on all of creation. And the Imam says, وَجَدَّتِنَا فَاطِمَةَ حُجَّةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا. That our grandmother Fatima is the proof of Allah on the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Of course, I've said this before as well, no taqleed in Usuluddin does not mean I get to make whatever review I want. I get to choose the logical basis of my own views. And of course, the best, the highest ranking miracle that proves the Nabuwah of Prophet Muhammad, the everlasting, the continuing Nabuwah of Prophet Muhammad, and the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is none other than the Quran. Other prophets had miracles. Nabi Musa could turn a staff into a snake. He could part the river, part the ocean, part the seas. Nabi Isa could cure the sick. Nabi Yusuf could interpret dreams. But all of those miracles were limited. The miracle of Prophet Muhammad was unlimited. The miracle of Prophet Muhammad, still the challenge remains. If you want, try to produce a surah like the Quran, an ayat like the Quran, you will not be able to do so. The first time I went to Ziyarah, I went to Iraq. It was a student group from England, actually, Maulana Sabzawari, who leads the Imam al-Asr youth group, youth Ziyarah trip to Iraq and Iran. And we had a translator with us. He was Iraqi from Najaf, excellent in English and excellent in Arabic. So we were in the haram of Imam al-Abbas. And one of the khuddam was making the presentation, the khadim who was responsible, the vice president who was responsible for the expansion of the shrine of Al-Abbas. And as soon as he reaches the ayah of Quran, the translator says, stop. I cannot translate this. Quran is not translatable. He would say, there is slang Arabic, and then there's Fusha, there's classical Arabic, there's poetic Arabic, there's Arabic of the Hijaz during the time of the Prophet, and then there's Quranic Arabic, which is the highest sort, and it cannot be translated into any other language. We have the proof of the Nabuwah of Prophet Muhammad in front of us. And we have the proof that it is the final Nabuwah, final Nabi. Why? Because the miracle is continuing. Had the Nabuwah of Prophet Muhammad stopped and another prophet come, like the way the Baha'is believe, or Musaylamat al-Kadhab was prophet, he lied about his prophecy, then they would have, that wahi would have stopped, that revelation would have not been pertinent anymore. But the fact is that the Quran, Sayyid al-Khuwa'i marhum, the great Ayatollah, he used to say, he says in Tafsir al-Bayan fi Tafsir al-Quran, every generation produces their own tafsir of the Quran. Every generation produces hundreds of tafsir of Quran. And each tafsir is inherently correct because the Quran says, whoever wants to get whatever out of the Quran will get whatever they want. Meaning the philosopher will get falsafa, the arif will get irfan, the faqih will get fiqh, the extremist will get extremism, the liberal will get liberal philosophy and all of that. And he says all of them are correct. That is the proof that the Quran is the eternal miracle. That is the proof. And we want to make sure that we are the true followers of the Quran. And by that I mean not just the book. Because Rasulullah, when he was sick and on his deathbed, he asked his companions to give him a pen and paper so he could write something down that will protect them in the future. And he says, they say to him, he is mad. He has gone crazy. His sickness is so severe, he's gone crazy. Hasbuna kitabullah. No. We are the ones who say that the kitab needs mufassirin, and we have, after Rasulullah, Fatima Al-Zahra, and 12 mufassirin as the Aimah of Ahlul Bayt. That is why, when, after the Prophet's demise, Imam Ali did not leave his house until he had completed his own tafsir of the Quran with Sha'an al-Nuzul, organized in the way that the Prophet had taught them. But because the ruling authorities were making their own tafsir, he hid his, so that there would be unity amongst the Muslims. If I want to be a follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen, I need to go for unity amongst Muslims. If I want to be a follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen, look, when Fatima Al-Zahra salamullah alayha became shaheed, Imam Ali could have ended all of them. We have the iman that he could have ended all of them. But he stuck true to his promise for Rasulullah that said, Ya Ali, after me you will not pick up your sword. And dear brothers and sisters, it comes time to the musibah again. After Karbala, there is no Christian, Muslim, Shia, Sunni, Buddhist, Hindu, Jew, nothing. There are only two religions after Karbala. Either you are Husseini or Yazidi. And I give you proof that many of the Shia of Imam al-Hussein's time, the Muslims were not ready for Imam al-Hussein. The Muslims were not ready for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. How many Muslims were in Kufa? I said last time, many of Yazid's forces who were Kufans made the hijrah from the hellfire of Yazid to the Jannat of the Shahadat on the way of Imam Hussein. How many Shias were in Kufa? How many Shias were in Yemen? How many were in Hajj when Imam al-Hussein was making Hajj? Did Imam al-Hussein invite any one of them to join his forces? No. No. When Karbala happened, after Karbala, Muslims pelted Ahlul Bayt with stones. Yet when Ahlul Bayt reached the city of Mosul in Iraq, which was a Christian city at that time, They refused entry until Yazid's forces gave Ahlul Bayt back their hijab. The famous story of the Christian monk who comes to Imam Hussein when Imam Hussein is a child, comes to Rasulullah, asks for children. Rasulullah says it is written in the Lawh al-Mahfuz that you will not have children. Imam Hussein even then grants him 7 children. After Karbala, when the head of Imam Hussein was brought next to his monastery, and he found out it was Imam Hussein's head, he sacrificed all of his 7 sons for the way of Imam Hussein. This is the characteristic of the true Sahabi of Imam Hussein. And of course, we have the example of Wahab. Wahab, the Christian, who was following Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. When he was following Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, they say he was attracted to the words of Imam Abdullah al-Hussein. He was newly wed, dear brothers and sisters, and newly wed, and his wife and his mother were with him. He had talked to his mother. His wife did not want him to join the forces of Imam Hussein because she knew the shaheed, but she herself made the hijrah after his shahada, that he went to his mother and he says to his mother, Hussein is the right path, I know that. Then she says, go my son, join the forces of Hussein. They say when Wahab al-Kalbi went to go fight, they say Imam al-Hussein, that his wife came to Imam al-Hussein and says to him, tell me, promise me, when my husband enters paradise, that I will go with him. They say Wahab fought, and he fought valiantly. The enemies, they surrounded him, they killed him. It was the tradition of the Arabs that they will fight people one-on-one, but I don't know how cowardly Yazid's forces in Karbala were, that they were not able to fight the members of Imam al-Hussein's forces one-on-one. They killed Wahab. They chopped off his head. They say that Wahab's head was thrown to his mother. His mother takes the head, and she says, she throws it back, saying, what we give for sadaqah for Ahlul Bayt, we do not take back. What we give for sadaqah for Al Muhammad, we do not take back. His wife, she goes to Imam Hussein, you promised me that I will die with my husband. As soon as that happens, they kill Wahab's wife as well, dear brothers and sisters. I want to make mention of another companion of Imam al-Hussein, and that is the companion of John the slave. John the slave was given to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Originally, he was the slave of Abu Dhar. When Abu Dhar became shaheed, he went to Ahlul Bayt, he was given to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and they passed from one imam to the next. He used to sit and eat the salt from the dastarkhan of the imams on the day of Karbala. On the day of Karbala, he wants permission to go fight, dear brothers and sisters. He wants really badly to go fight. Imam al-Hussein keeps on saying no. And Imam al-Hussein says, you are free now to him. He says, oh master, is this the way you treat a slave? That when in times of goodness you are with, the slave is with you. But in times of need, when the slave wants to give you his life, you let them go. He says to him, what happened? John was black, but he says to him, is it because my color is dark? And he said, not because of the color of his skin. He was alluding to his heart. That Imam al-Hussein could not bear to not let him go. He let him go. Dear brothers and sisters, when Karbala finished, when 10th of Muharram finished, when John became shaheed, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam kissed the neck of John. They say that Abu Abdullah al-Hussein only did that to 2 individuals. He did not do that to Abbas. He did not do that to Qasim. He did not do that to Hur. He did not do that to Habib ibn Madahib. The first person whose neck he kissed was that of the black slave John. And the other's neck that he kissed was that of his son Ali ibn al-Akbar. When Ali ibn al-Akbar became shaheed, Imam al-Hussein kissed his neck as well. Dear brothers and sisters, after Karbala, when we experience a dead body or a few dead mayyat in our lives, we notice after a few days' time, they start to smell. But in Karbala, the exact opposite happened. They had the smell of paradise. They would say that as soon as you reached John's body, there was the most beautiful smell coming from his body. Dear John, I want to tell you, we as Shia will want to be in your position. We want to be in the position of Wahab Kalbi. Our mothers want to be in the position of Wahab's mother. So that when Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman comes, and it comes time for us to give sacrifice, our mothers will say that what we give in the way of Al Muhammad, we do not take back. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون ما تم الحسين
يا حسين
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.